Good evening, everybody. This is Jeff from Junior Hockey Advisor. Monday night talking hockey. This is the Junior Hockey Advisor live stream. I know that we've got a group that's close to 7,000 on our discussion group. We've got 5,000 or 6,000 on our page. Our industrial professional page has got a couple thousand. These groups are starting to grow, and I'm not sure where you're watching from. I got a little too much Elvis going on with this collar tonight. You just have to bear with me. Nice shirt, but maybe not with a jacket. So I'll tone it down for the next live stream. Anyway, what do we do? Why are we here? We talk about junior hockey. We talk about the progression from U18 to junior and the progression from junior to other junior programs or moving on up into the college ranks. So the whole purpose of this is to talk about the process, to educate you on the process, and to talk about, things that are going on in the junior world that could affect what you're doing, how you're doing it, and how you're going about the process. So what do I mean by the process? The process is, how do I get recruited? How do I get exposed? Do I need an advisor? How do I contact teams? Do I play tier 3? Do I play tier 2? Do I have a shot at tier 1? Do I play in the States? Do I play in Canada? Do I go to prep school? Do I go to U18? Do I stay at Minnesota high school hockey? There's so many things that we talk about on this show and we discuss. And it's a good idea, if you're new to this, to also make sure that you use our companion videos. And what is that? Go to Junior Hockey Advisor YouTube page, and you'll find hundreds, dozens, maybe thousands of videos that I've put out over the last few years on a lot of subjects. And I'll give you an example of how this works. One of the news stories. Oh, we got a news story? That takes too long. Okay, we're done with that. That was our news story. News story. It's not new news for people that are around the game, but the Eastern Hockey League, EHL. EHL is a tier 3 league on the East Coast. It derives from the EJHL. Back 5, 6, 7 years ago now, the EJHL was the creme de la creme of tier 3 hockey. Rivaled the BCHL in some ways, rivaled the North American Hockey League in some ways. Had real small league, had excellent numbers. NHL draft picks every year, maybe not on every team, but every year. And it was a really good league. Well, when the NCDC powers that are currently in control of the NCDC, they made a decision to go into the USPHL model. And first it was USPHL, and it was Premier, Elite, and then Empire, 3 levels of hockey. Inside of Tier 3 was the model for the new EJHL. But there were certain programs that weren't invited into the new model that were, that used to be EJ teams, that used to be Empire Hockey League teams. And what happened was it became, the haves, you might want to say. Others would argue that the way it worked out for the EHL teams was really good for them versus the model they would have been in, and they're possibly being repressed inside of the USPHL model. I'm not going to get into that political discussion right now, but I'll tell you what happened was you had the offshoot, which is the EHL, and the EHL spun into its own entity that really focused mostly on, almost 100% on D3 hockey, and they became very good at their model. And that's the current EJ. I can't say. The EJ is the old model. EHL. The EHL is very good at what they do. They're a D3 model. Well, they watched the USPHL spinoff, and everybody told them that would go up in flames because they moved away from USA Hockey. No Renegade League has ever survived. But now the USPHL, including the NCDC, has survived 5 or 6 years now without USA Hockey and their involvement. So today, some of the questions that came up in the news is the AHL is going to follow suit. They're going to follow suit, and they're going to break away from USA Hockey. And so they will self-insure, self-regulate. They'll basically make their own rules. What are some of the advantages of that? The advantage is imports. The biggest thing is having the ability to crack into that import model more than the 3 or 5 players, depending on what tier you're playing at, that USA Hockey currently allows. Now, USA Hockey does that because they're USA Hockey. It would make no sense to be the controlling body and to let 50% or 80% of the teams be Europeans. Not that the numbers would get that high, but if it was unregulated, there's always going to be somebody pushing that number with USA Hockey. That number could be 3, 5, 6, whatever it is. It's not enough. It's not enough in the eyes of somebody that'd be pushing USA Hockey. So USA Hockey's got a firm stance on things like imports. They have firm stances on background checks, following the rules for safe sport. All these things that are involved, those in an outside organization go by the wayside. You do not have to follow any of the rules that have been set up by USA Hockey. Things that we take for granted is being things that you do for compliance. You don't have to be have USA Hockey residency, U.S. residency. You do not have to have a safe sport. You don't have to register with USA Hockey. You don't have to do any of these things. So what this does is it puts the EHL on some terms at a much more competitive advantage, especially because what's happened over the last few years, and I'll get to what I was rolling into in a second. I know I used the breaking news to give you that story, but that story was also a lead in about what we're here for and what we talk about. The EHL is able to compete more with the NCDC and the USPHL because of this. What's happened over the last few years is the NCDC has not become a Tier 2 juggernaut that competes with the BCHL and competes with the NCDC, the North American Hockey League. I am going to get some of these right tonight, and I'm going to keep or quit making so many mistakes. Maybe it's not enough coffee, but it's probably also the monitor is blinding me with this shirt, so I'm getting distracted with all the colors and the codes. But let me take a sip of coffee and try to explain this again. EHL is moving away from USA Hockey. The advantage, European players. The advantage, no regulations. Yeah, it cuts the budget. If you don't have to do safe sport on everybody, if you don't have to do background checks on everybody, I'm not saying they're going to get rid of that, but that's a significant part of the budget that you can save by doing that. But the other part of this is it puts them on a more competitive battleground with the USPHL NCDC model, because the NCDC, no matter what you think about the league, you could love the league. Personally, I like a lot of things that the NCDC does. I don't like how they market themselves as being a Tier 2 league that competes with the BCHL and competes with the North American Hockey League. There is no numbers out there that substantiate that whatsoever. Are there some D1 players in that league? Yes. Are there some really good hockey players in that league? Yes. But the vast majority, get their commitment somewhere else, and then they house at the Boston Junior Bruins or the Hitmen. And you hear me talk about this. If you've listened to me, I've said this over and over and over again. Those teams can compete with anybody. The rest of the league may not be able to, but there'll always be 2 to 4 teams that are extremely competitive, but the rest of the league isn't. The rest of the league is fighting to get decent D3 players put into decent D3 programs. So what does this really change for anybody? Where is this going overall? Does this really change the market? Well, could it mean that there's more European players playing in the EHL next year? Possibly. Could it mean that the EHL is a little bit more run and gun and they don't play by the old established rules of USA Hockey? Possibly. Nobody can really say yet which way they're going to take this. But what is for certain is it's going to allow them more flexibility on what they can and cannot do. So is it good for hockey? Yet to be seen. I would say that there is no losers from my perspective on this except for USA Hockey. USA Hockey is eroded, all of their junior programs except for 2 leagues and, of course, The third, which would be the NA3HL, which is a part of the NAHL. It's tier 1 with the USHL. It's tier 2 with the North American Hockey League. Now it's just going to be the NA3HL as their tier 3 choice. To me, that's not a competitive situation for parents that like the USA Hockey model to only have that choice. Now, I'm biased towards the North American Hockey League. Everybody knows that. I work as a player development director for a team. That's my world. I love being a part of that league. I love, watching what's going on there and the amount of competitive players and competitive teams and the professionalism of that league. But I also know that competition's good. And I'd like to see USA Hockey, reconsider, how they go about things and not be such a brick wall on issues, and maybe, try to redevelop things to bring this all under one envelope again, or one umbrella, I should say. Again, I don't know if that'll ever happen. I can't tell you that there's any reason why. No, I saw on the comment boards today, there were people that were out there, and there were questions that came up about this whole issue, and people were like, well, does this mean that the North American Hockey League or the NA3HL could go too? Does this mean that the USHL could go? And I'd say probably not. If so, it's going to come from a direction that's completely going to blindside everybody, because right now the USHL gets over $1 million a year from the NHL via USA Hockey. In other words, there's a bulk amount of money that comes in as a grant to USA Hockey, earmarked by the earmarked to the USHL by the way it's written up by the NHL. I've got a great video on this. I'll remind everybody, I'll put it up on a screen share in a second to show you where that video is at. But it's USA Hockey, how does it work? It breaks down why USA Hockey got involved with everything all the way down to the American development model. What caused the American development model to become the thing that had to happen about 10 years ago? What caused that? What struck that? And most people will be, I'll give you a little hint. It has nothing to do with what was going on in the U.S. It had everything to do with what was going on in Russia. It wasn't Canada and trying to compete with Canada. It wasn't trying to be more competitive. It was because the KHL came into being. And when the KHL came into being, the NHL said, screw this, we're not going to spend money in Russia developing junior players and U16 and U18 players anymore. Why would we spend money here? The KHL is going to take all these players. So they took this big amount of money and they went back and they said, USA Hockey, what can you do for us? So USA Hockey started coming up with a model, and that model was the American development model. What we see now and what that's improved is it's improved a lot of things. It's improved exposure. It's improved, a designed plan. You like it or not, it has been very, very good for hockey. Everything, including more money into and more exposure into our national development program. That money comes from the NHL. So the NHL not only gives money to the USHL via USA Hockey, the whole national development program gets a large portion of money for their development and for operating expenses from the NHL via USA Hockey. College Hockey Inc., one of the great websites that are out there that allows you to look at college hockey, get all the rules about college hockey, see where the commitments are in college hockey. That's a benefit from the NHL via the grant with USA Hockey. So the KHL actually is the reason why we have Russian KHL hockey, is the reason why we have so many expanded things. And that expansion goes down to money being put into our women's national program and our women's development too. It's just not about the men's side. Now, is it proportional? No. Nothing in hockey is proportional when it comes to men and women as far as USA Hockey goes. That's why you've got Ann Arbor with a development program that has everything that you want under one roof, but they have two men's teams there, two boys teams, 16 and 18-year-old, or 16 and 17-year-old. But is it 17 and 18? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about, the two teams in the national development program. But we don't have the same thing. We don't have the mirror on the other side of the coin with the female program. How hard would it be to put two female teams in that same market? Who do they play? Well, because they're in that market, they would have all the teams in the provincial women's hockey program, PWHL, out of Canada. They could probably play some of the pro teams on the East Coast. They absolutely could play the 16s and 18s from Shattuck. Excuse me about that. From Shattuck in Minnesota all the way to the 16 and 18 programs out of Chicago and all the Detroit area. It could work, but that's another day. That's another discussion. So anyway, now you know why we're here. Now you know what some of the news that is going on. We got a chance to put some new news on, and I just want to go back in and say hi to some people. If you haven't said hi, jump on the our comments, say hello, say where you're at. Would love to know who's involved tonight. I realize we're up against the NHL tonight, so we're not going long. First comment up is so if you're friends with me on Facebook, and I apologize, I don't know how to expand my friends because of what I do with these live streams and with the social media. I'm maxed out at whatever the number is, 5,000 or whatever. So I know a lot of people that are on our other platforms try to friend me. But the ones that are friends with me today, I posted that I was flying. I was up in the airplane today, and it was a beautiful day. And I just decided to go up and down the coast, all the way up into Oswego and towards Watertown, and then curl back around and just fly the coast of Lake Ontario. It was a wonderful day, just beautiful out. Just enough cover with very high clouds, so that there was sun, but enough clouds to give you a little bit of coolness in the air, so you're not up there sweating. And just had a beautiful day flying today. And so, yes, I did enjoy flying today. I appreciate you bringing that up. Jacob, love the new jingle. Actually, that's bringing the jingle out of the closet. We'd had that for a while, but we decided to bring it back out and throw it in the mix again today. So you look at some of the old stuff, you'll see that. Okay, Jeff, welcome aboard. I don't know if I've seen you actually. I've seen you post before, Jeff, on your own stuff, but I don't know if I've actually seen you on here. Good to see you on here. And Jeff says, how many NCAA D3 players have you heard moving up to NCAA Division I in a typical year? I know the number. The number for this last year was 18. So there were 18 players that were Division III players. And then I'm going to tell you how you can do this yourself, so you don't have to just trust me on the numbers. Now, it's a little skewed. There's not really that many that move up through the ranks. And a lot of reason is there's a misnomer about talent, and there's a misnomer about academic scholarship. So what happens with a lot of players, it's usually the opposite direction. You get a lot more that move from D1 down to D3. And the reason is usually playing time, and usually because of lack of scholarship. So if I'm a decent student or good student, and I'm going to Division School A over here, and Division School A costs $40,000 a year. Even if I get an athletic scholarship that takes a third of the bill off, and let's say I get a little bit of academic money for a little academic scholarship that's available to any students, let's say that the tuition comes out to $25,000 a year. Well, it's still $25,000 a year. Remember, most people do not get full scholarships. Who gets full scholarships? Most of the kids that are on full scholarships are playing on teams that are literally top 10 teams. And that's the Michigans, that's the Minnesotas. The Big Ten schools, they probably lead the league as far as the amount of full scholarships. I've given the example before. My nephew, number 1 overall pick in the USHL draft, 6'4", 6'5" forward. He won a couple of national championships at the U16 and U18 level. Big, tough scorer. Goes to his first year, and he was on I believe a 3 for 4. So he paid for his first year, and the next 3 out of the 4 years were covered by the team. And that was a pretty darn good hockey player. First overall in the USHL draft type kid, and a couple national titles under his belt as a leading scorer on the team, and huge, big kid. This is what I'm saying. He wasn't at the national development program level, but he was right in that next window down. Okay, so if you're in that next window down, and those kids are not getting full scholarships, the average good player, can I say that? Yeah, I'll say it. The average good player, the average D1 player is not on a full ride scholarship. remember, teams carry around 30 players. So if you're carrying around 30 players now, and that used to be much, much different. It used to be that Big Ten teams carried 23, 24 total. That was it. And over the years, the numbers crept up and crept up. Now, it used to be because some of the other programs weren't full scholarships, so they carried more players because some kids couldn't afford to finish out, or whatever the reason they lost kids, or a kid that was in a non-scholarship situation found some money in another school. Well, nowadays, because the amount of players that are out there on Division I teams, scholarship money is hard to come by. There's many more players that are on 25% or less scholarship money than you'd believe. So what does this do with Jeff's question? If we go back and put Jeff's question up there about moving up, well, moving up is a little bit more difficult for a kid that gets to a D3 program and finds out that he's at if you're on a top 15, top 10 D3 program, half the team was a commitment player at one point, transferred down from D1, and the level is extremely good. And we're talking about who was in the finals this year? It was Norwich, it was Geneseo, but you throw into that mix Wisconsin Stevens Point, you throw into that mix Adrian. It was Adrian Geneseo this year, but Norwich is usually up there. Wisconsin Stevens Points, Oswego's. You get the mix. All you got to do is look at the My Hockey rankings. You can get an idea of those top programs. Those programs are chock full of former D1 players, because a D1 player that's getting little to no money can go to a school that's got more flexibility to use grants and scholarships, and actually he may end up paying $10,000 versus $25,000 and still have a competitive situation where he's stepping into a bigger role and playing. So harder to move up only because there's a stigma along with D3 once you go there from a lot of D1 coaches that they would rather just get a fresh player out of juniors and move them up through the ranks than to take a D3 player and move them up. We saw 18, and I'll break that 18 down a little bit for you, Jeff. That 18 came from Lindenwood players, St. Thomas players. We saw some programs that had D3 that are moved up to D1 or are getting close to move up to D1, or players that rolled through a transition from the D3s to the D1s. That's where a few of those numbers came from. And then there's players that graduated and used their extra grad year to move up too. So how will you get there? How do you find that out? Where do you go to find that out? Let me see if I can show you how to do that. And I will just figure out how to do this real quick. Okay, I don't want that. What I want is, give me a second here, and I'll get the right screen share up for you. Let's get that one off of there first. I got all kinds of stuff going on here. Okay, let's go up here and get my screen share so I get the right one up for you. Now I don't even know how to get this off my screen. All right, let's just go back to my original screen, and then we'll talk from there. So, all right, let's go up to here. Okay, so here's the screen I want. Now I just got to get this other junk off of here. Okay, so, all right, good. Let's do one thing first. I was going to mention that, why are you not moving now? Okay, let's just get you out of there. There we go. Okay, so I'm down there in the bottom. This is the YouTube page, and I was mentioning our YouTube page a second ago. If you go on this YouTube page, what you can do is you can find just a ton of content. We've got videos on a lot of subjects, and the one I was going to point out to you is, let's get the content, and I will show you. Manage videos. There we go. Get over here. There's a video that looks like, when you know it, it's been watched a lot today, but it's not on the list. I'll go into analytics. I know it's over here, and we can go over here. It's got the continent broken down, and it looks like this. So if you look for the video, it's got the United States on it like this. That's the USA Hockey, how it works. I guess you can't quite see it on that screen. Let's see if I can pull the whole video up. Just killing it tonight, aren't I, folks? Okay, we don't need to watch Junior Hockey Advisor. But this is USA Hockey, how it works. And that'll break down all the things we were talking about USA Hockey. Now, let's jump into the question about D3 to D1. We're going to go into Elite Prospects. And if we get into Elite Prospects and I sign on, because I use the upgraded version, $8, $9 a month, whatever it is. So if I just go in here and I type in NCAA, I can pull up the NCAA. This is Division 1. If I pull up NCAA Division 3, of course it'd be Division 3. So once that clicks in, I can go down here and now it's got, that's not there yet. It's still looking at that kid. Okay, there it is. NCAA Division 1. It's got a list of all the teams here. It doesn't show the standings on here. You got to go to the actual USCHO or go to the actual leagues to see that. But what it does do is it breaks down all the players. So here's all the players for 21-22. So if I just hit show more, this pulls up a interesting filter. So now I've got all the players listed, and I've got them listed by total points. And then below that's goalies too. What's really neat is you can see of the top players that play in NCAA, you can also see Bobby Brink. He's a Philadelphia pick. Nate Smith, what is that, Arizona. The Rangers got Bobby Trevigo or whatever the heck the kid's name is. And you can just see across the board. Those little icons tell you what programs the players are already committed to as far as the draft. Now, if I go back up to the top here and you see has played, now I go in and I type in NCAA. You can see that it pulls up NCAA Division 3. I click on that. Now what I'm saying is I'm looking at all of the NCAA and I want to see how many players. Now I said 18. I said that off the top of my head. Let me see how close we are to that number. Now I'm going to apply that filter. So this is any player that played NCAA Division 3 this last year across the board. Oh, 19. Okay, and then we've got two goalies. So 2021, but 21, two kids actually didn't play. So 21, 20, 19. 19 is not bad, Jeff. I said 18, 19. So you get the idea. And once again, look at the schools. The St. Thomas kids, you can understand what's going on with the St. Thomas kids. You got a few of them there, but if we just look at the first one on the list, the Bowling Green player, we can look at his background and see that he was a Norwich kid, played 3 years at Norwich, then he jumped in to play at Bowling Green for his last year. A lot of times what happens in a situation like this is the player actually had the opportunity to graduate early. That's what happens in a lot of situations is the player actually finishes up at his D3 and then gets a chance to move on. So I hope that helped, Jeff. I hope that gives you a chance to, learn a new tool if you haven't been using Elite Prospects, and to see how you can filter that information and get it yourself. But also, it's usually the other way around. If I did that same filter the other way around, do you want to do that? Should we do that? I think we should. Okay, let's do that. Let's go in and let's see if we can reverse that trend around. So now I'm going to go up here to the top, and we'll just throw in NCAA. Now we'll grab NCAA Division 3. Let that kick over. Takes a second. I'm running a lot of computers in the house, and it's wireless. I run just wireless on this. It's been working fairly well, but it's a little slow. Okay, so now we got all the Division 3 schools up. We've got all the different leagues up we can look at. We come down here and we got the list where the green is at here. It also breaks down, you can see by nationality where everybody's from too. 0.5% from Russia, 0.5% from Finland. We've got some Chechnya, a little bit, 1.4 from Sweden, and then 17% from Canada. So that's kind of a neat breakdown. We go up here and we hit this green button, and that's for player statistics, but it gives us this filter. Now let's go NCAA, and go backwards. We'll reverse the same filter and just use it the opposite direction. And let's see how many players moved from NCAA Division I or played at least some Division I hockey and then moved to Division III. I am going to guess. This is just a guess. I have no idea. But I'm going to say the number is over 150. The number could be a lot more than that, but I'm going to say the number is over 150. No clue. Haven't looked this up ahead of time. And our number is, we're at 60. We're at 70. We're at 80. We're at 81. And our goalie's 91, 95. Oh, I didn't quite hit it. So it shows you the schools. Now, if we go back up here and look, what schools did I mention? I mentioned Norwich. I mentioned Adrian. I mentioned Geneseo. I mentioned Stevens Point. Utica. You could probably throw a couple other ones in there. So we look right off the bat. We see a lot of Adrians. Plattsburgh should be up there too. Aurora's been doing a really good job. New England's been doing a good job. We got the Geneseos we talked about. Geneseo down here. Hobart's been doing a good job of recruiting. We got the University of Wisconsin's. The Rivers, the Stevens Point. 4 Stevens Points right there in a row. And so you get an idea. It shows you across the board. Another Stevens Point. So when you talk about the top D1 programs, you're going to have a good number of players that have worked the other way down. So, Jeff, you gave us good content for a little bit there. Thank you, Jeff Carlson. I appreciate the help on keeping us rolling. So how much, if any, is the NHL giving to the Ncaa? Ooh, good question. The number is easily accessible. I just haven't looked at it in a while. It used to be about 100,000. Remember, the USHL is a little bit more of a, wine and dine the NHL scouts that are there because there's a lot more NHL scout exposure. They work at a different level of it's a bigger stage. It's a bigger, the presentation is a more expensive presentation. The Ncaa has done a great job, but the TV is better. The accommodations are better. Everything's a little bit better or a lot better in the USHL, and that's the way it should be. So $1 million there, and I believe the number is going to be 100,000 or 200,000. You can get that number. I can look it up for you, but if you go if you just Google USA Hockey and look at their annual report, that's accessible. It's right in the annual report, and you can see just by reading the annual report. Who wants to read an annual report? That's the first thing that comes up is, why are you making me read an annual report? I agree. Not everybody wants to read an annual report, but it's there. It's going to be in that range, $100,000, $200,000. It's nowhere near the same amount of money that the USHL gets. Okay, let's see what else we got. Winston's on. Good to see you. Denver's on. Good to see you. Tammy in Orlando's on. Good to see you. North Central Ohio is on. Thank you for the comments on there. Tony's on from St. Louis. Let's go Blues. Hey, Tony, I'll throw that up there for you. I'm not a Blues fan, but I just like seeing all this new blood. I like to see, except for Tampa Bay. I mean, I'm a fan of Tampa Bay. I like them, but I like to see different teams. I like to see the Canadian team still in it. I think it's a good time. Charles in Massapequa, good to see you. Dana's on in New Hampshire. Vince is back. Good to see you. And let's see what we got. We've got New Brunswick on. Andrew's on from New Brunswick. And Alberta, Canada's on. Hey, if I put the St. Louis one on there, I got to put the Let's Go Oil too. What a great situation there. I mean, some of us from back in the day remember the Lanny McDonald's and the Wayne Gretzky's going at it with the two Alberta franchises. But it's been a long time since we've had good competitive Canadian teams make runs at it where there's multiple teams. I mean, Toronto could have been there too. It could have been a lot of exposure from the Canadian side. So I think it's good for hockey. I think it's great for hockey right now. So we got a 15-year-old aspiring player here from Buffalo, New York. We got New Hampshire back on, and we got Jason on in Vancouver, BC. Good to see you too. And it's just this is good for hockey. If you haven't been paying attention to the North American Hockey League, it has been unbelievable hockey. I know the Clark Cup just finished up. We'll talk about that when all the different ones finish. But tomorrow night if you've got hockey TV, I strongly recommend you jump on and watch the North American Hockey League championship game. It's been unbelievable. It's been probably, my limited exposure to history of the Ncaa, goes back a few years. So I can't go back way back. But in the last 5 to 8 years, this might be the most competitive North American Hockey League playoffs I've seen. Overtime games, 1-1 games, just incredible hockey. Alaska's a brand new franchise against New Mexico New Mexico lost in double overtime last night. That was a Freudian slip because I work in the South. I'm pulling for those South teams. No, it's the New Jersey Titans. They pulled it out in double overtime last night. In fact, one of my former players, a player I used to coach, is they scored the game winner in double overtime. Ryan Coughlin, he's an RMU commit. Coached him when he was a tiny guy up until about 12 or 13 years old. He was the scorer, game-winning scorer of the game that put them on to the championship game. Irony is, last year, from his same team, he played with my son, obviously, when they were little tiny kids. My son scored the game winner in the semifinal round that put his team into the championship round last year at this time. So being teammates, they both chuckled a little bit, at least Ryan did, when he found that fact out. So that's great to hear. And let's get on. Let's get a couple more questions answered if I can. And we're not going to go long tonight, folks. We've already gone 37 minutes. We'll cut it short here in a minute. But we got some good content out there. We got some good information out there. So it says, Charles says this, so if you're a good student and a good player that could get academic money, does it make you more attractive to the D1 school so they don't have to use as much athletic scholarship money on you? As long as you can use that, yes. So schools, D1 schools can use academic money as long as you qualify for that money just like anybody else in the population qualifies for that money. It can't be earmarked just for hockey blade tape, customized taping. It can't be for skate sharpening 101, and they've got a scholarship pool for anybody that takes the skate sharpening degree. No, it's got to be opened up to all of the student body, and you have to compete against the student body for any of that money academically. And if you're eligible for it, usually you find out that eligibility at the D3 level to find that money and to be a little bit more flexible on the grants from the school, it's much easier at the D3 level for them to be able to give a president's grant or different types of grants to students across the board on the system. So yes, you can do that. You will also see students that get into schools that they may or may not get into because they're high academic kids, not on their hockey, but on their academics, because there is such an onus on grade point average, and it's tied right into the whole athletic system with the Ivy schools. You've got people that are on those teams just for buoyancy to keep the grade point average up, more so in the Ivies than any other programs. But yes, that does happen. But it puts kids in an awkward situation sometimes when you've got the ability to academically help the team, but you never step on the ice during a game. And some kids, it doesn't bother them a bit. Other kids that that last 1 or 2 years, and then they realize they want to play. They went to college to play hockey. Now, don't get me wrong. Somebody offers you Harvard and says you're not going to see the ice, but you can be a part of the team. And, oh, by the way, you get to go to Harvard, but you're not going to see academic money at Harvard. I can tell you that right now. Ivy money does not come easy, and you're competing against not only kids in the United States, you're competing against the world. And I think there's such high academics there. There might be some aliens in that mix that go to the Ivies to bring those grade points up even higher. So, all right, let's get back on. Let's see what else we've got going here. If you sign an oil contract, does that prevent you from participating? Oh, an oil. OHL contract. Does that prevent you from participating in USA hockey tryouts? I don't believe it does. I believe you're still eligible for national team. Now, Ncaa is different than the national team process because there's been plenty of OHL kids over the years that participate in U18 and above, U17, U18 above teams that have been either OHL kids or WHL kids. So I don't think that does. Hey, look, these rules change, and sometimes I don't catch them all. But as far as I know, no, you're still eligible across the board there. So where would the NHL rank against the AJHL and the SJHL? Thanks. That's a good question. That's a very good question. Just on pure size, it's a bigger league. There's 29 teams, 30 teams in the NAL right now. You can look it up. Don't quote me because I'm going to be off one. Whatever number I pick, I'll be off by one. The NAHL is second only to the USHL for the amount of D1 commits. So if we're talking about using the D1 system as your barometer on how good a league is, it's the second best junior league out there. That it's not a major junior league. In other words, stay away from the WHL, the OHL, the leagues that you lose your NCAA eligibility. Take away those, your rankings usually fall into the first, the USHL. Second is the North American Hockey League, closely followed. And this is how you manipulate statistics. If you look purely at, because the BCHL is a smaller league, if you look at the BCHL compared to the NAL, sometimes the BCHL has more of a percentage per team of players that are D1 commits. So therefore, they should be considered the better league. The North American Hockey League has overall more NCAA commitments than any other league except for the USHL, because they do still put a high-end D3 product out too. So usually, let's take those three and set them aside. You've got the USHL, BCHL, and the NAL. You can argue who falls into which place between the NAL and the BCHL. After that, the AJHL is a distant fourth, but it's closer to the top three than it is to what the fifth place league is compared to what the AJHL is. So in other words, the AJHL has been a steady fourth place finisher for years. It's been that fourth place finisher. Now, people will argue for the CCHL. They'll argue for the OJHL of being great leagues, and they're good leagues. They're really good leagues. But the AJ, as far as the amount of production, it's 5 or 6 times more than those other leagues. And usually, now I've got, we were talking about videos a second ago, and that USA Hockey video. I've got a video. Let me see if I can find it quick for you. That you probably wouldn't think of. That it's called "Junior Hockey Rankings Are Worthless." Let me show it to you here if I can. Right there it is. Junior hockey rankings are worthless, and it's got a bunch of red arrows and green arrows on the front of it. See if I can pop this up here. It won't. Anyway, that's the name of the video. It's on. I'll tag it. I'll put it on the discussion group. What's interesting about that video, though, and why it's so. Here, I'm going to pull a little bit. Welcome to Junior Hockey Advisor. Here's what I do is I break this down. Oops, that's the USA
full-time
Hockey
staff.
I don't want that one.
Colorado Springs.
Man, I'm having a hard time.
This is.
I want the worthless video. Let's see if I can find that. Don't want that one. Anyway, I'll put it up for you. I can't find it right now, and I'm going to lose you guys if I keep screwing around with videos. Anyway, what I do is I break down all the different leagues, and I especially look at the BCHL, and I look at the North American Hockey League and give you examples of, where the talent lies, why it's a good idea to be on one of the top teams in a top league versus the bottom, about how almost every, now this information is dated. It was all extremely good until the pandemic. The pandemic kind of threw us in some topsy-turvy. Trends that were always there aren't as clear right now until we kind of get through this get back on a cycle after this pandemic. And the reason is because players scrambled to get anywhere. There were players that were playing They were BCHL players in the OJ. There were players that were in the North American Hockey League that were Canadian players that didn't go back to the North American Hockey League. There's so many things happened in those last 2 years. We don't have all that information yet, but hopefully that helps you a little bit. Grab that video. It's about the rankings. You'll see a bunch of arrows on the front and how the rankings aren't good and why. But really what that's boiling down to, the rankings irritate me because the CJHL puts out these rankings that are so woke. They're so politically correct. I'm sorry. I'm a big fan of the CJHL, but whoever decided that the SIJHL needs 1, 2, or 3 teams in the top 20 for all Canada, when the BCHL has 4 teams, sometimes 5 teams that have players that are either on the NHL draft list or on the watch list. They're cram packed with guys who are going to be playing Division I hockey the next year. When you're 10, 12 deep on Division I talent and you're not even showing up on the top 20 rankings, but they've got teams from the Maritime and they've got teams from the SIJHL in there. No disrespect to those leagues, but they're just not, leagues that players come out of that are moving up the ranks. And I know one of you is going to say, Herbie Hancock the fifth made it all the way to the NHL in 1978 from the SIJHL. Okay, you got me. There's one kid that made it. Okay, the bottom line is those leagues are not developing for Division I and potentially past Division I into higher level hockey. The BCHL is, the North American Hockey League is, the AJHL is. The Brooks Bandits, can play with anybody in any league, anywhere, every year. They're that good. That's an AJ team. Yes, there's good teams. And remember, something else happens inside the Canadian system. Because they play for a cup across the whole CJHL, every year, one of the different leagues gets to host and one team gets to host. So the reason why there should be once in a while a team from, let's say, the Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League that's really, really good is maybe that's the year that a Northern Ontario Junior Hockey League team's hosting. And when they host, they know they're going to make it to the cup finals, and they're going to host all the other good teams that won their way in. Those teams get stacked, and they can compete with anybody in the nation because that team is stacked. Now that's like it or not, that's the way it works. So anyway, let's see what else we got. I hope that helped a little bit. It says pushing smaller leagues. That's why not talent. I'm assuming you're talking about the Canadian leagues and being smaller, and that's not why they're talented. That could be true. I can tell you also, as a person that's been up to, British Columbia, has been up to Alberta. I've been to Saskatchewan. I haven't spent as much time in the Maritime, but I've been to all the other leagues multiple times. It's hard to get to Saskatchewan. It's hard to get to Manitoba from the East Coast. So a lot of times you see the Toronto area programs getting, their teams getting exposed. And the AJ, because you've got Edmonton and Calgary there, they're easy flights. Boom, boom, you're in. You can get there from the West Coast. You can get there from the Midwest. You can get there from Detroit. You can get there from Boston. They're easy to get to. The BC's easy to get to. You got Vancouver. You can go into Seattle to see BC games. So it's easier travel for the most part, than it is to get into some of the other leagues. That's why you don't see too much Quebec or Maritime players being exposed to NCAA Division I hockey, is just because it's just hard to travel to those areas. I would say that the demographics have just as much to do with it as the size of the leagues. And also think about what happens when really good players are in Saskatchewan. The really good players migrate to the coast, or they migrate to Toronto, or they migrate to the West Coast. They don't really migrate all the way out to the Maritimes, but you get my point. So Manitoba, same thing. They tend to move one of the two directions, or they go south of the border. You got a lot of good hockey players in Saskatchewan and Manitoba that also come into the North American Hockey League just for the opportunity. So hopefully that helps a little bit. Hey, I know we didn't kill it all, and I apologize. I know I seem scatterbrained at times tonight. But I'm telling you, it's the shirt, the reflection, way too much going on there. One more question. Okay, just because you're nice enough to ask for one more question. One more question. What's the best way to get my kid in front of North America NAHL teams in Alberta? If you got a second, tell me the age. Can you type in the age real quick? If you can type in the age, I might be able to give you a little bit of advice on this. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Let's see if you can come up with it. I can tell you this right off the bat. Not knowing the age, use the AJHL. Use the AJHL as your barometer, okay? A lot of great Canadian players and Americans. My son's a perfect example. 2 years in the null. Where did he start, though? He started in the AJHL. The American kid played in the Detroit market and then moved into the AJ, used the AJ. Out of the AJ, he was a USHL draft pick and a tender into the null. You see a lot of players. The captain at the University of Michigan, Blankenberg, played U18 hockey, high school hockey, then U18 at Victory Honda, went up, played 1 year in the AJ, then he's at the University of Michigan the next year. So I would use the barometer as the AJ to get to the null. There's, I can tell you, every American and a good 20, 25 Canadian players, and the Americans, because that's a competitive league, and it's easier to get an American to play in the United States. We're capped by the amount of Canadians or foreign players in the North American Hockey League. But if you're AJHL worthy, then most likely you're going to be, in the running for a North American Hockey League situation. But at that age, 16 or 17, I would absolutely look at the AJHL first and use that as a springboard. And depending on who you go to, you might not want to leave the AJ. You get into some of the good programs there, and there's, not all the programs are on the top of the league all the time. You got programs. The one thing about Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, British Columbia, the towns just envelope these teams, and the culture of hockey is so much different than most of the United States. Now, you get a little bit of it in Johnstown because they've got the slap shot aura. It's the old barn. They fill the place. It's really got a good feeling. In the South, you get big crowds because those are old pro towns, and they converted them into null towns over the years. So your Lone Star program, your Shreveport program, your Amarillo program, the reason why they've got such loyal bases, the base has been there well before the null was there. Those are old pro towns that just kept the same names and kept the programs going. You get up in Alberta, at Camrose, Bonnyville. You get into what's the town right at the base of the mountains over by the Rockies there, not Camrose, Canamore. You get into the Brooks programs. You got great crowds. You've got pretty easy travel if you're in the South versus the North. That's a good league. That's a really good league, and it's a good league. Thank you, Canmore. That's a good league across the board to cut your teeth in. But there's a lot of Division I kids that stay there all the way through. You can't get a kid, American or Canadian, to leave Brooks. They just don't want to leave. Now, some will go to the USHL. But even so, it's like pulling teeth to get them out of there once they're there. So that's a good league. That's a good league across the board. Look, folks, went a little longer than I thought. We still got an hour in tonight, or almost an hour in tonight. I hope you enjoyed this. A couple videos I mentioned, I will make sure I post them on the I'll put them in the notes on here. It was the one about USA Hockey and how it works. The other one was on how the rankings work, so you can get an idea of the amount of players that are in each of the different leagues as far as competitiveness. And besides that, folks, have a great night, and we'll see you next week. We'll not be on. I'll be in Michigan, and we will not be broadcasting next week. It'll be 2 weeks before we broadcast again. And I believe that I'm broadcasting from Chicago from our pre-draft. I'm going to actually be at the Chicago pre-draft for the Lone Star Brahmas, and we'll be broadcasting live from there. I think right in the rink. If we're not in the rink, maybe it'll be my hotel room. I'm not really sure yet. But we'll see you from Chicago in 2 weeks. And take care, everybody. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it.